Okay, it's birth story time. I am about 11 days postpartum and feeling strong and good. And I also really just want to tell you guys a story before I forget it. And so Dr. Leah and I are going to go through the entire birth process, which is a long one, of my fourth baby and fourth home birth. And we also took some questions from Instagram. So really, really excited to share this with you and share some photos coming soon. So stay tuned.
Welcome to Healthy as a Mother, the podcast for becoming and being a mother, with your co-hosts, Dr. Leah Gordon and Dr. Morgan McDermott, two naturopathic doctors who get it.
Each week, we teach you how to be the healthiest mother you can be, from fertility and preconception to pregnancy and birth prep, through postpartum and throughout motherhood, empowering you with the natural health guidance and education you're not getting elsewhere, so you can confidently navigate the broken system at large.
The real, the raw, the untalked about. And remember, this information is not intended to diagnose, treat, or manage any disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes. We have a much anticipated episode today talking about Dr. Morgan's birth story. I am so excited for you to share it with everybody. You asked a question on your story and got a bunch of response questions that we're going to go through. But first, I was there, so I'm so excited to be able to talk about this. But why don't you start with just sharing what you feel like you want to share around the birth of your fourth child?
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah. And I definitely want your input. So like whenever it feels like a time, for you to interject like the way that you perceived things going on or whatever, I would love to hear it.
Yes, absolutely.
We haven't even talked about it.
I know. This is what we're doing right now.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So the birth of Sunday Monroe. So she was technically due, my most accurate due date was October 21st. And all of my but then I was also given at the anatomy scan ultrasound, I was given the date of October 17th because she was measuring a little long or something like that. And so with 3 other births, all of those other kids have come between the 2 dates given, one at the anatomy scan and one from like my sort of conception-based due date. And I know that every baby is individual and that it's going to be whatever, but that I just really think that I was a little too attached to that idea. And I remembered asking my midwife early on in my pregnancy too, like, do you see that women have patterns where they tend to gestate a baby to like about the same time? And she was like, no. She said, and I was really surprised by that answer. And I kind of like didn't want to believe her. She was like, nope, every time is totally different. It doesn't matter. And I was like, Janice, I've had 3 babies, around this time. You don't think that would be like what you'd expect most often? She was just like, nope, absolutely not. And I was so like surprised by that. And I kind of felt, maybe looking back in retrospect, that there was a little bit of an intuitive like, this is maybe going to be different this time for me. So anyways, long story short, I started having contractions on the morning of October 18th. And if you follow me on Instagram, I was like really vocal about that date, mostly because, well, and in telling people like, hey, this is what I'm trying to kind of like manifest. I'm manifesting October 18th I was so specific. I was like, after dinner, but before bedtime.
In the hour of 6 p.m. Exactly.
Exactly. In the living room with all the other kids. That was really like the one thing that I wanted. But the reason why I was so attached to October 18th was because that was honestly the first date that I was like, I wanted to make it to that date. I didn't want her to come beforehand because I wasn't ready. I had a bunch of stuff that I was finishing up with work and just personal life stuff. And it was fall and I wanted my now 3-year-old had her birthday on the 16th. And so like I wanted to have her party. Our friend Brooke, the photographer, was coming into town to photograph the birth and I wanted her to arrive and be here. And so there was a lot of different little things that I just felt like I'm not ready for this baby to come yet because I need to do a lot of stuff. So the 18th was like the first time that I was going to kind of open up to the idea like, okay, you can come whenever you want. So I was having a lot of people like put energy towards that. Anyways, also because the energy that I put towards manifesting the way that I wanted my 3rd birth to go was exactly the way that it went. It happened it was 12 hours start to finish, which is exactly what I wanted. And I thought, okay, I know it was crazy. It was like, I felt so powerful, I think, from that, the way that in my mind I'd had this idea that I wanted it to go a certain way and then it did. Maybe it was actually just that I was like intuiting that that's how it was going to go.
Yeah.
Anyway, or I just got really lucky. Who knows? So I was kind of like, I can do that again, or at least I'll try. Lots of lessons learned because none of that happened. So, okay, fourth home birth. All of my babies have been born at home, which is super lucky. I know for a fact 100% that if my first birth had been in a hospital, he would have been a C-section. And there was no point at the birth during the labor where he was like in distress or anything. It was just that it was going very slow, long time of pushing, kind of like off and on contractions, things that they don't like at the hospital. So anyway, and he was in a really bad funky position. And so it was very difficult to get him out. And so that was really like, that can be like a sort of game-changing moment, whether or not you're allowed to do that if you feel like you can. And he was fine and I was fine. I was just tired. But anyways, so fourth home birth, same midwife that I was having with my third. And I started having contractions that morning though at 2 a.m. of October 18th. And I was literally like, holy shit, it's happening.
Amazing.
Yeah, I know. I woke up and I'd had no contractions up until that point. And all of my other labors too, when I started having contractions, that was like the beginning of labor. There was no, prodromal labor. There was no just, days or weeks of random contractions or anything like that. It's like I would have Braxton Hicks. Yeah, of course everybody does. But I'd had nothing up until that point besides Braxton Hicks. And so when I started having contractions, I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, this is actually really happening. I am so powerful. And I still am powerful.
I am a goddess. No, you totally are.
I still am, even though it didn't go the way that I wanted it to. Anyways, and so they were like every 20 or 30 minutes, and Brooke was in town and you were around, and I was like, all right, like cool. It kind of went out throughout the day. They sort of spaced out to like maybe every hour, but then they'd be every 30 minutes sometimes and every 20 minutes. And they were definitely contractions, not Braxton Hicks, but they were super light. And, I was just going about the day. No mucus plug loss or anything, which again, in my prior births, loss of the mucus plug meant labor and baby was coming like within the next, 12, 18 hours, something like that. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, whatever. And then like, night came and I was like, all right, I guess this isn't happening. And then that happened for 10 days straight. Oh, God. and I started to go a little wiggity whack. And I know that there's women, I've been like, I started deep diving into prodromal labor because I'd never experienced it before. And I know that there's women who, unfortunately, experience prodromal labor daily, or most of the time it's at night, which is like the rudest thing ever because then you can't sleep for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I'm just so sorry to you because I can't even imagine like the mental game it was to never really know. Okay. Also the mental game of when you've had so it's called precipitous labor, which is like a very, very fast birth when it's under 3 hours. When you've had a birth like that and it really rocks your world, you're sort of like, you feel like a ticking time bomb. Like I kept thinking, at any point, these could just all of a sudden get really intense and like a baby comes out. And so, you and I and Brooke are all friends from San Diego. Well, you and I are friends from college as well, but we were trying to like plan little fall adventures and different things. And it was like beautiful outside. And so we would go and we would do things, but I was sort of always a little bit hesitant and cautious. And then I would say though, that over the course of those 10 days, like there were certain days where I didn't have a contraction or I had like 2 contractions in 24 hours or something like that. So it wasn't every 20 minutes for 10 days. No, I don't want to make it sound like that. Yeah. But there would be times where I'd be like, oh, wow. Like you guys came over and you made that salmon one night.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That night I was like, this is maybe it because they were coming. Yeah. But I thought that it's like the boy who cried wolf kind of feeling. And you just get worn down by it. And so also I was losing mucus plug now for those, like almost those entire 10 days, the day that we went to the river. So maybe it was 7 days of mucus plug loss, like just every day, a little bit more, whatever. So anyway, that was just really hard on my mental, emotional. And I would say that the end of this pregnancy for sure was the most uncomfortable of my pregnancies. My lower back, like, and the chiropractor I was always going to him weekly, and he's like, yeah, the like disc basically is probably bulging in your L5 because of carrying the weight of the baby in the front. And and he's like, it's not worrisome. It's not like it's going to be something that you need to deal with for the rest of your life. It's just during this period of pregnancy. But like between that and like the shooting pains I was having kind of randomly in my hips, feeling so big and heavy, being woken up sometimes by contractions for a couple hours and going back to sleep and being like, what in the world is going on? And I just wanted to like meet this baby. I was over it, done. I couldn't put my shoes on. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore.
And she was like, no, no, no.
Yes, exactly. And I'm like,
tease.
baby girl, like what the heck? And then this is like so insignificant, but it's just kind of funny, is that I hadn't, because Scorpios get a bad rap. Sorry to anybody who's a Scorpio, but you know what I mean. And I didn't even realize how like close to the cusp of Scorpio her due date was. And so I had like 3 friends that were due all at the same time. We were all texting each other. All of us went late, which is really weird.
Oh, that is weird.
We
There's
all
some weird like eclipse stuff going on. Like the world's in a weird place. Yeah.
It is very weird. And I had to shut out all of the war stuff.
Even that, like astrologically, like even outside of all of that, like just I've been told by the people who know stuff that the moon and the stars are doing weird things. People who know stuff, it's not me, but I received it. But yeah.
Okay. Oh, the other thing is that I've had this like bronchitis-y type cough for like 2 months now, it feels like. And at the end of the pregnancy, it's like coughing with a huge belly is really hard. And that was getting to be really, really obnoxious to me because I needed to cough out mucus and I just kind of couldn't because I couldn't get that hard of a cough. So now that I'm postpartum, it's getting better finally. But like, geez, that was really obnoxious. But yeah, with the war stuff like that all happening right at the end of the pregnancy, I was like staying in tune, and I was actually trying to really learn a lot because I don't know anything about Israel or Palestine or the long history. I didn't know literally anything. I couldn't have told you anything. Admittedly, I'm really not a geography person. I'm not a history person. I just never have been. It's always been a tough concept for me to understand, and I know it's important. So I was trying to educate myself. And then all this stuff started coming out about the kids, and I could not. I was
and you shouldn't have.
Yeah.
It's not the job of the pregnant women or those trying to conceive to hold space for that.
100%. And even now, still postpartum, like I see things come up on my feed because obviously it's a very big issue and it's going on all the time. And I feel so privileged that I can just like block it out and not think about it. But I like literally can't. It like ruins my life to think about even for a few minutes what's going on with the kids there. So
yeah.
That was, I was like, whoa, okay. I am like trying to protect my little energy here and like go into labor and birth a baby. And anyways, yeah. So it was right smack dab in the middle of this like eclipse. There was like multiple different eclipses going on. Oh, and I have a friend who told me at the beginning of October, she's like, I really think your baby's coming on the 28th or 29th. And I was like, why? And she's like, because that's when the full moon is. And I was like, oh yeah. I mean, I get why you think that because a lot of babies come on the full moon, but none of my babies have ever come on the full moon. The moon doesn't affect me.
I'm more powerful than the moon.
Yeah, my manifestation is going to will this baby out on the 18th, 10 days prior to what you're saying, lady. And then she was freaking right. Please. I was like, Gabby, don't wish that upon me. She was like, sorry, that's just like what I think. And I'm like, no, I've never gone late. I've never been like, that would be 41 weeks, And so anyways, long story short. So we're just putzing around. I'm getting like, some days I'd have really bad days and I'd cry like the whole day. Some days I was fine. I was like walking, doing different stuff. And this whole time too, and I know that I try to check my like obsession about this because I learned about Gilligan's Guide, which is a form of, you could think about it like spinning babies. It's not exactly like spinning babies, but it's a fetal positioning based on the maternal positions that you can do to get the baby in the optimal position for birth and labor. And I learned about that during my pregnancy. I think it's an amazing tool, especially for first-time moms. It's her, Anne Gilligan is a labor delivery nurse, and we have an episode of the podcast we'll link in the show notes so that you can listen to it because it's amazing. Her whole goal is to prevent the first-time mom primary cesarean that's unnecessary, that's due based on like a bad positioned baby, basically.
Which is probably me.
Which is exactly you. I really do think so. And I kick myself that I didn't know this information prior because I feel like we could have done something. But so I know that I had that information and that education earlier in the pregnancy, but I was interested much more than I have been in my previous pregnancies with what her positioning was. And I will say though, her positioning like tripped me up the whole time. I swear she was actually like almost transverse a lot of the time. And I know she was head down, but I think that like instead of her body being kind of like a C like this, and I know for the listeners, you can't see what I'm saying, but if like the tips of your fingers are her head and then you make just like a C shape with your hand and like your wrist is up above your fingers because that's like her butt is up like that. that's how normally the baby would be, either on their back on their left or the back on the right. I think that Sunny kind of collapsed down into like a little N shape. And like,
That
so her
makes
butt was
sense.
sort of down. Yeah, because all that, like, often I would have consistently just hard baby parts all down below my belly button. And it would be like soft up at the top. And I'd be like, what's a shoulder? What's a butt? I couldn't figure it out. And I have that kind of belly where you can like really see the baby quite easily and sort of like lower fluid levels and thinner skin. And so it's like, it was like an enigma to me. And so I was always trying to figure it out. But she also always wanted to hang out on the right-hand side, which, because I've had babies before, isn't that big of a deal at all. And like, you don't even need the baby on the left-hand side until labor starts. And I knew that, and I wasn't trying to get obsessive about it. But during these 10 days of prodromal labor, one of the reasons why sometimes people have prodromal labor is because the baby is like posterior, or the head is asynclitic, meaning that it's kind of tilted to the side and it's not putting the right proper pressure on the cervix for it to just continue to stay in a good contraction pattern.
Gotcha.
So I was doing different things like that and whatever. Anyway, so this is how the birth really started. Let's see, I have to like backtrack. Thursday, the 26th. So she's born on the 28th. So Thursday, the 26th, I went to a local place here called Kana. I'm going to say it properly. And I got a massage by Jolene. If you live in the Treasure Valley, you absolutely need to treat yourself to one of these massages. Anyways, she used a ton of clary sage. She was doing acupressure points. She was like, let's go. You want like a lot of oxytocin? Like, you know, are you ready to have a baby today? Because like, I'll go on you. And I'm like, yes. And it's not like it's an induction massage or anything like that, but it can be helpful. Really getting a woman super duper relaxed can be the thing that gets it going, especially if you're that ready, which I was. I was almost 41 weeks at that point, kind of freaking out. And I'd lost so much mucus. I was like, what is going on? Like, I might, maybe in my mind, I was like, maybe I'm like 5 centimeters. Like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
And I'm, again, nervous that I'll just have this fast birth. Anyway, I go to the massage. I take Brooke with me. Brooke had to leave that night. We already bumped her flight back one day.
I know.
Because Southwest is a saint, and, you know, you can do that. But she had to go the next day because she had a wedding to photograph. So we really pushed it like to the limit that we could with Brooke. And she was with me at this massage place, and we drove home. We're going to eat dinner, and then I was going to take her to the airport. We drove home, and I am like in mid-sentence, and I just have to go to sleep at the couch. This overwhelming wave of fatigue just passed over me, and I was like, sorry guys. So, you know, she and my husband talked, and I laid on the couch, and I just fell into this like quick little deep sleep for like 20 minutes. And then I was woken up by a contraction. Okay, no big deal. I've been having contractions, so whatever. And then I'm like still laying there, and we're all just kind of chatting before I take her. And like at some point in that time period, I had another one, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm driving her to the airport now. I'm still having them at some, you know, interval. Again, I'm not timing them because I don't want to be obsessed about it. So I dropped Brooke off begrudgingly. Who would have known? She was there for 10 days.
I know.
And
Gosh.
I'm like, what in the world? Like, I would have thought we timed that perfectly. In my mind, she was going to come, the baby was going to be born really early in the beginning half of her trip. And then she and her husband, who was also coming, were going to go and explore Idaho. That was like what I thought was going to happen, and help me with my kids postpartum. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I started having, these contractions, not started having them, but they continued, and they were every like 30 to 60 minutes throughout the entire evening. So I go to bed that night. I wake up on the Friday morning of the 27th at 3 a.m., which was kind of my pattern. If I was going to wake up in the night from contractions, it was around 3. And I have one. And then like 15 minutes later, and it was a strong one. It woke me up. Oh my gosh. Actually, yeah, that was really interesting. So I have one on my left-hand side, and I'm like, whoa, it woke me up. It was so strong. And so then at some point I rolled over to my right-hand side, fell back asleep, and had one that was solely in my back. So maybe she had like flipped funky, or I don't know what it was, but it was only in my back, and it jolted me out of, it was probably like a 4 or 5 out of 10 contraction pain, which is still a really significant contraction. Like when you have felt all the range of what a contraction is like. But from dead sleep to be woken up and jolted by a contraction is the rudest feeling in the world. Am I right? I know that happened to you too, where you were like asleep or at least super, super rested. And then you kind of wake up like almost at peak.
Yeah, 100%. And then vomit.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I know. I'm so
No,
sorry.
it's okay. It's not about
Oh,
me. It's about you. No.
you're
No,
not.
but I've never
You're.
had back labor though. I don't think I ever experienced that. I don't think. So
Oh my gosh. Well, I hope you never do. You're not gonna vomit this next time. It's gonna
cool.
be
Yeah,
great.
I'm manifesting that really hard.
Yeah, good. Okay, so anyways, I'm like, I roll back on the left hand side, and I'm like, wow, okay, I'm not able to fall asleep now in between them because it's like maybe every 15 minutes, and I'm getting really sleepy, but then I keep having them. So I started to kind of like look at my watch or my clock now, and then I had a pee, so I get up to pee, and I could feel that I had a bunch of mucus just like sitting there, which I know this is really whatever. This is a birth story podcast, so
Whatever.
if you weren't wanting details like this, you are talking to the wrong person. So I wipe and it's dark in the room, but I was like, that was a lot. So I turn on the light really quick and it's all bloody. And I was like, oh, here we go. I was like, okay, all right. Like, and there was a couple of drips of blood just in my underwear, which that freaked me out because I've not seen actual just like drips of blood. It was like clear mucus that was blood streaked, but quite bloody. And then even some pieces that were like very just dark maroon and kind of brown. You know, as your cervix is opening, there's some old blood that's just been kind of sitting there, like with your period towards the end of a period, or sometimes in the beginning as well. But then as it's stretching, you know, the cervix is really friable. This is why sometimes after intercourse, your cervix, when you're pregnant, your cervix will bleed a little bit. And so people will have spotting after intercourse and they like kind of freak out, but it's totally normal. But so you'll have bright red blood in your bloody show is what it's called, which is like mucus plug mixed with blood because your cervix is dilating. So I had that at like almost 4 a.m. And at like 4:15, I had like another big chunk of it come out, or like wave of it come out, whatever. So I waited maybe like another 20 or 30 minutes and they were still coming and a lot more mucus was coming out. And so then I went up and I woke up my husband. I was like, hey, I'm like, this is happening. This is again, Friday the 27th. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, babe, no, you need to like fill up the tub. And he's all sleepy and he's like so reluctant to do it. He does not want to do it. And if you guys have listened to my other birth stories, there was about 1.5 inches of water in the tub for Savi's birth because it takes a long time. And I was like, I'm going to be absolutely livid, raging mad. And it's not like it was his fault. It was that such a fast birth.
Yeah.
But I told him though very clearly, I'm going to tell you ahead of time with this birth, and like, we need to just have it blown up. And having 3 other little kids, I get the idea of the liability of like a birth tub just sitting in your living room, and we wouldn't fill it up until it was go time. But like, I was like, you know what, worst case scenario, if we have to deflate it in the morning, we can. But like, I might be going into labor like right now. This could pick up so quick. Do you remember Savi's birth? Like, I'm trying to tell him and he's like all groggy and sleepy and stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to call Janice. So I go downstairs and I call Janice and I tell her, Janice is my midwife. And she's like all sleepy and I feel so bad waking her up. But she's like, okay, well, like, you know, your cervix is dilating. Just like try to rest and keep me posted. And I'm like, okay. And then I fell asleep and I woke up in the morning and there was no freaking baby. And I was like, oh, you have got to be kidding me. And at some point, I guess Wes had come downstairs because we've not been sleeping in the same bed. So this is something that I know a lot of people trip out about because they see me sleeping in here with Sunny now, like the baby. They're like, where's your husband? I'm like, I don't take the liability of him sleeping in the bed with us right now because if he snores or if he does anything that would contribute to me waking up or not sleeping well, like I'll be pissed and I don't need him in the night anymore. I did a lot with our first baby. Yeah. But then all the other babies since, it's actually way better if he sleeps and gets a whole night's sleep and I just take care of all the baby duties and then he takes care of everything else in the morning, you know? So anyway, but at the end of pregnancy, I was a menace in the bed. I was just flipping, flopping and grunting and contracting and just so pissed. So he wasn't sleeping with me anyways. So, he had come downstairs to check on me because he's like, well, what the heck? She said that she's like having the baby tonight. And I was just peacefully sleeping in here. So he went back to bed. Gosh. So I wake up in the morning. I text Janice. I'm like, I guess this isn't happening. I don't know. But they were still every hour. And then at like 10:30 a.m., they were every 20 minutes. And then from like 11 to 1 p.m. or a.m. into p.m., they were every like 8 to 12 minutes. And they didn't increase in intensity at all this whole day of Friday. But I had them all day And I was just like, okay, like maybe it's going to be tonight. I was having tons of bloody show all day long. And, just thinking like, or I was thinking, and I would get really sad when I would think this, maybe this is like another fake out and I'm sad. I'm really sad.
Right.
But I didn't know. And I was just like, whatever, at least something is happening to my cervix. I know that for a fact. Like I am opening because all this blood is coming out,
Mm-hmm.
And to be clear, it's not blood like a period of blood. That would not be good. You would need to contact your provider. This is like streaky mucus and old bloody mucus, brown stuff. If you've given birth, you know what I mean.
Let's take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors.
One of the main things that I'm doing to support myself this postpartum is really focus on my postpartum nutrition, because although we know that we can't control sleep when we have a new little baby anymore, the one main pillar of health that we can control is what we put in our mouths and what we feed ourselves. So that includes nutritional supplements like the supplements from Needed, my very favorite prenatal on the market, and it is a postnatal as well. So that means it's a supplement that you take while you're postpartum and throughout your entire breastfeeding journey. So I recommend to my clients, patients, and friends to take the Needed prenatal multivitamin for at least the first 9 months postpartum or the entire time that you're breastfeeding to help support you nutritionally, give you all of the vitamins and minerals that you need, and keep you really feeling healthy and good during this entire intense time of your first year of motherhood. So go ahead and visit thisisneeded.com and use code HEALTHYMOTHER to save 20% off of your first order. So again, that's thisisneeded.com using code HEALTHYMOTHER to save 20%. This is a big game-changing move for you, as well as focusing on your postpartum nutrition so that you can feel really good, supported, present in your motherhood, and then just enjoy your new baby.
Okay, now back to the show.
Around 2 p.m., they're like every 20 to 30 minutes. I'm looking at my notes here because I had to write it all down because it was so confusing. Took a nap at 3 p.m. Again, they're still like every 12 to 20 minutes. All evening, through the whole day, we put the kids to bed. And then now this is one thing that Wes always does for me, which is going to sound so funny. And I know it didn't really work out that well for your birth. But I don't want to poop in labor. And I know nobody wants to poop in labor, but it like gives me a higher than normal sense of anxiety. And so I want to make sure that it doesn't happen. So I have him give me an enema. And I know I could probably do my own enema, but I just don't want to.
I need you to suck it out of my butt. Come on.
you know, actually, I need you to push this up into my butt.
Oh yeah, my enema experience did not go well.
I'm so sorry about that.
Okay, I actually don't even remember it because I was like in the middle of my labor and I was totally in like La La Land, and I feel like I came out of like La La Land and realized what
had happened,
the mess that had ensued.
Long story short, you just didn't quite make it to the toilet, and that's okay.
Yep, that's all right. And my husband loves me dearly because he cleaned it all up.
He cleaned it up immediately. He was on it, and he didn't even like care. He was so excited. We thought this baby was coming any second. Okay. Anyways, so Wes gave me an enema around like 8:30. Again, I'm still having these contractions. It's like whatever. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, this is kind of like the other labors I had where like I had this mucus all day long, all throughout the day, and then these contractions all throughout the day, which by the evening time, they were a little bit more intense. Not greatly intense, but I was having to like breathe through them. I think I actually posted myself going through a contraction on Instagram, and I had to like breathe through it. Not moaning, but just it did take my focus. I had to stop talking.
Mm-hmm.
So it gradually, slowly changing. And so now it's like, all right, I guess we're going into the night again. And so this is what I've done for the last couple labors, which I really, really love. And I know a lot of people need a lot of support when they're laboring, but I have loved this thing that has happened with all three of the girls now. It didn't do this with Gage, the first labor. I feel like everybody's just kind of trying to survive through your first labor. But
yeah,
I've had this like period of time in the late evening hours between like 9 p.m. and midnight where I'm just by myself in the room, and I'm like, I have my salt lamps on and I diffuse clary sage and I play this one playlist that I've played now for all of the kids.
Aww.
It's like this Omi kind of like yoga music, and and I just sort of have this like these hours to myself because I don't need support yet, and I am having contractions, and I'm just kind of getting into the groove and being alone with myself. Like, and I I don't know. It's really sweet. I have these like little LED candles. It's like very dim. It's very like woomy and cozy. And I kind of am getting into these different positions. So I was like sitting on the ball and I was leaning over the ball on my hands and knees. I was stacking pillows on the edge of the bed and laying on those. I did lay down in the bed, like try to go to sleep to see if I could do that in the beginning of the night. And I probably lasted like an hour. And you know, the scent of clary sage it's an essential oil and it kind of tastes or smells like sage, just, you know, that strong, pungent, and good kind of smell, but it is a little bit different. And I have such a strong birth connection to it.
I remember when you brought it to me for my birth and you're like, oh my God, this like puts me back in labor.
Yeah, it does. It gives me like immediate birth vibes because I only ever really smell it as either acting as a doula or in my own births. And so I was like, oh yeah, like, you know, and trying to also be really present that like, this is our last baby, this is our last birth, and, you know, enjoying myself. And anyways, and so I'm kind of like going back and forth the bed, doing different things, and like the hours are just ticking by. And I was timing the contractions. I started timing the contractions at 10:30 p.m. I still have them in my contraction timer app, and you can see from 10:30 p.m. all the way till 6:45 a.m. I had a contraction. Every between 12 or 8, I would say on average 8 to like 15 minutes. Some were 20 or 30, some were every 5 or 6 minutes, like, you know, but on the average, it's like 8 to 12, somewhere in there. And and they were lasting a long time too. They were like 90-second contractions. And so I like just that, and actually that whole time, oh, that was Sunny tooting. If you just heard that on the, I don't know if the podcast will pick up, but it was like a little, I guess she probably wasn't tooting. It was probably more like poop, but whatever. Anyway, I did the like miles circuit. I was doing hip dips. I was like walking back and forth. I was trying to stay upright sometimes. I was doing like an exaggerated side lying because she was actually still on my right hand side. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm in like labor. I think this is not going to stop. I would like her to be on my left. And she would just not budge. She was on the right hand side. And I was like, whatever. I was eating like this dry boba bar and like a meat stick, and it was not tasting good. And that's how I kind of knew I was like, oh, maybe I'm getting a little bit further into this like labor land kind of, but it was hard to get into labor land because they were so far apart. Like it wasn't close enough for me to feel like I was in a zone, you know. I was like, and that was actually really hard. My midwife said
maybe that's why your labor was perceived as hard, because you weren't really in like labor land.
No, I was just like me. I was like just
I know, that's how I felt. Like I was waiting when I came over, which we'll get to it. I was kind of waiting for you to be in more of like labor land.
Transy state.
Yeah. And you were just like, oh my God, like talking to the kids. And I'm like, what's happening?
I know. Oh, I know. You were so sweet and like trying to get them to be quiet. I know. It was really like weird. I couldn't stay in the zone for that long because it was like 15 minutes, you know what I mean? And you just kind of expect that they're going to get closer and closer, and they just really weren't. So all of a sudden it's like 5 o'clock. Oh, well, wait, hold on. I was going to say that I was eating the food and just trying to chew it and feeling like, because I did feel a little bit hungry, and it was just so unappetizing to me. And it was taking me a really long time to get through like one meat stick, you know? And I did have the thought, like, maybe I'm further along. And I also, this whole time, I'm kind of wrestling with the idea of like, when do I call the midwife? When do I call you? Because you now, and then my sister-in-law's sister, who was on our property for just like 2 more days, she is like a amateur photographer. And she actually was at Sloane's birth, and she filmed Sloane's birth. And she happened to be in town again, and Brooke had to leave. And I was like, Andrea, would you be willing to like film my birth again? And she was like, yeah, totally. So that was kind of a funny thing. That she happened to be in town because she doesn't live here. She lives in New Mexico. So anyways,
that's so funny.
But I wanted to call you guys because you were going to be my photography team, and I wanted you to be at the birth anyways, just like as a friend and doula. And I'm just confused, and I'm like freaking over it. So all of a sudden now it's 5 a.m. and I'm like, you are shitting me. Sorry about my language here, but this is exactly how I feel. I'm like, this is a joke. This is a joke. Like, what is happening? And I started to get so discouraged. And I really felt like I needed Wes's emotional comfort, not physically from the labor. But I was getting a little moany. Like I was having to moan and really breathe through them. So they were getting more intense. But again, the timing was so throwing me off. And this has been a huge lesson I've learned. Okay, so Sunny's awake, so you'll hear little baby sounds, and she's so cute.
You'll hear little baby
Um,
sounds.
she is just the cutest little thing. We're so happy that you're here, although it took you such a long time to come.
Oh, she is so
Um,
cute.
so I was like, I need to just like probably cry and be held and be told that it's okay, because I'm so tired, and now I haven't slept
Mhm.
at all the entire night. And
Ugh.
I woke up at 3 a.m. the night prior. So I only
Yeah.
slept for like 4 hours the night prior, and then now I'm rocking a whole no sleep night. And I know I'm going to have a baby like soon. And I have to do the hardest part of this whole thing on no sleep. And I'm so sad about it.
I know
And I
that.
just felt like, yeah, I just felt like woe is me and so discouraged. So I like crawl upstairs and I get into bed with
Oh,
Wes.
I
And
hope
he's
you
like,
took Pulsatilla. Did you take
I
Pulsatilla?
didn't. No, I totally should have.
Oh, I should
I
have brought
know.
it for you. That's such a woe is me remedy.
I didn't even think about it. I was like, just, I don't even know. I was just so sad. So I like crawl into bed with Wes, and he's like, Moses. He's like, what time is it? I'm like, it's 5 a.m. I'm like, I've been laboring all night long. Ooh, that was a big poop. Okay. All right. She did a big poop. I'm like, it's 5. And he's like, well, what are you doing? How are you feeling? I'm like, I've had contractions every 8 to 12 minutes this entire night. Like, I haven't slept at all. He's like, no. He's like, you didn't get any sleep. He's like, go to sleep. I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay. I will just go to sleep. Yeah, I would. I can't. And then I like, boom, I have a contraction. And so I'm like laying next to him, and I'm like shaking my leg and like moaning. And he's kind of like, oh, okay. Like, that's what was so weird. Yeah, it was so weird. It was like I was having active labor contractions so far apart. It was just the weirdest thing. Anyways,
Yeah.
so I'm like crying, and he's just comforting me. And I was like, I need to make a game plan. Like, I want to call Janice. I want to have her come over. I want her to check me, which was one of my things that I didn't want. I didn't initially, my goal for this birth was I didn't want any cervical checks unless I felt like we needed to, or if the midwife felt like she needed to. And this was totally elective, but I was like, no, I need to know, because if I'm like 4 centimeters, I need to really check myself right now. Like, and I know it could change quickly, but I got to get into a better headspace. Like, yeah, maybe I need to take some herbs, some pulse, some like homeopathy, something. I need like a pep talk, but maybe I'm actually like, 7 or 8 or something. Like, I had no idea. I was so confused by the whole freaking thing. The whole 10 days was just so confusing to me. And I feel like I know a lot about birth, and this just like, I was always trying to figure it out, and there's just no answers.
Yeah.
Just because you do know a lot about birth, it's like even the midwives, like, she didn't claim to know what was going on. She didn't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going on. You just have
you were ready for your next level of universal education.
Yes, that's a nice way to put it.
We're like, you don't get to have an easy birth because you are ready.
Yeah,
young student, for your next
lesson. Yeah, exactly. About like just surrendering and not trying to control and not trying to analyze and get answers. Like, that is definitely one of my flaws, I think, is that I'm such an information-based person that I can go so like strict. I can hold on to information as like the end all be all and not really flow with like just the reality of what is.
Yeah.
Because I'm like trying to fix it. I'm trying to make it better. I'm trying to optimize it. I'm trying to like whatever.
We're both like that. And many people in the healing profession are like that, or the medical profession, or any higher education profession.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I guess.
Or any woman really anywhere.
Any person, every human that's ever been born is like that. So anyways, so we make this plan. He's like, all right, I'm gonna draw you a bath. I hate that word. Why is that what we say?
I don't know.
I'm gonna draw you. Like,
I hate that too.
Makes sense. Anyway, so he's like, I'm gonna get you a bath, and why don't you call Janice at 6 a.m. So just, it was only in like 20 minutes or something at that point. So I get in the bath, and it feels so good. Water feels so good. And it did occur to me earlier in the night, I was like, maybe I should just take a bath and like, get out of this like full air situation that I'm in, because it hurts.
So you had gotten in the bath before I arrived?
Yes.
Okay. So you were in the bath, and then you got out of the bath, obviously.
Yes. And then I got into the tub.
Oh, you were in the bath.
I was in my bathtub. Yes. Sorry. I was in
see.
my
You weren't in
bathtub
the
and my
tub.
Yes.
Okay.
And it was kind of like a little bit therapeutic actually getting in the bathtub in my room in general. I mean, obviously because of the water, but then also just like I had taken so many baths this pregnancy. Like I lived in that bathtub. I almost took a bath every single night.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, okay, here I am again. Like this is like probably the last bath I'm going to take hopefully while I'm pregnant. And it it was where Sloan was born, and I was just kind of like having these feelings and sort of taking me back. And so anyway, I text Janice and I said, hey, when you wake up, like this is what's gone on. I'm feeling really discouraged. I'd like you to come over, check me, check the baby. Like, let's just make a game plan. I need to like get some encouragement or something. So she texted me that she was going to come over in about like 45 minutes. So she did. I just was like chilling in there and taking contractions, and they're still really hard. And I was just moaning in the bathtub, kind of like having these hard contractions. It was just weird. So she came, I got out. I was like, okay, I know I said that I didn't want any cervical checks, but I feel like I really want to know, what's going on. And I was like, and when you're in there, can you try to feel the back of the baby's head for suture lines?
Mm-hmm.
So those are the like conjunction points where the different bones of the baby's skull come together, because remember they're really quite movable. They slide over each other so that the baby's head can mold down the birth canal. And it's tough to feel, but if I was open enough, she could try to feel and see if the baby's head was posterior, if it was asynclitic maybe a little bit, if she was able to get in there deep enough and feel. And she admitted, she's like, it's like really tough to do that, but I'll do the best that I can. So she goes and she checks me and she's like, I don't feel any. So if you do feel the suture lines, it's usually that the baby is posterior. You should just feel this like smooth little bump in the back of their head. And that would mean that they were in like a better position. So she's like, I don't feel anything. I feel like she's in a, everything's good. And I didn't really think she was posterior. I just like needed to rule it out as a possibility.
And did she tell you how many centimeters you were at that point?
Yes. So I was like, I think she said like 70 to 80% effaced. So that means the thinning. And so now for first time moms, usually they efface to almost like 100% before they start dilating. Subsequent pregnancies and labors, you can dilate before you're fully effaced.
Okay.
So that's why I was only like 70 or 80%, but I was 6-7 centimeters.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, thank the Lord. This is great news, because I just was like, not sure. I had no clue. I had given up all my sense of like logic of what, and I was just like feeling, and I was like, okay, well, what am I feeling? I know I'm in labor. Like, and I could have let go of all of these numbers and things. It was just, I think, encouraging to me to know that.
Yeah.
So that's when I called you after she left or after she did that. I was like, hey, because now I knew this information. I'm like, all right, this could go now really quick. Who knows?
Yeah. It was great for me because it was a Saturday and it was like 7 a.m. right at the time I wake up. You're like, perfect. Labor's happening. I'm like, wow, that's perfect timing.
That's great. You didn't have to be woken up in the middle of the night. So one other thing that was like a variable to this was that like now it's 7 a.m. and all my other kids are awake.
Yes.
And that was like another thing that when I got all discouraged at 5 a.m., I was kind of like, oh, like, what are we going to do now? Like, I'm in like real labor, and I knew that the kids could be around, and I knew I was going to have support between like you and Andrea, and if we needed to, they could be taken care of and taken somewhere. But it just kind of like added this little bit of like a wild card variable to me that I felt like not dealing with at the time.
Yep.
So anyway, I'm just like laboring back in my room. Janice and her assistant, who's a woman named Savannah, who was like super pregnant herself, but comes to and helps Janice do births. They helped me do the side lying release, which is a stretch that is really beneficial prenatally during labor. Helps to temporarily sort of expand the space between the hips and relax the pelvic floor so that like if maybe baby does need to rotate, they can easier. Often doing side lying release can get a baby to rotate out of a bad position if she was in one, which,
awesome.
I don't really think that she was, but I just was like, that was the only thing I was latching onto as like the reason why, quote unquote, the contractions were not getting closer together. It was like maybe
Yeah.
because she's just in this funky position. I don't know. Okay. So I was just like resting there. That's when you came in for the first time. I was like laying on the bed after they had done the sideline release, which sucked. It was really hard.
I
To
bet.
take a contraction through that pose is like hard to do. And Wes made me like this beef quesadilla, which tasted really good. And I ate the whole thing pretty quickly. I was ravenous.
Good.
And yeah, I'm glad that I ate that because I needed it and it just felt really good. So I'm kind of like laying on my bed. I can hear all the kids are awake. The water had felt so good that I was in the tub and I was like, I really want to get. Oh, wait, I didn't mention this. The night before, so Friday night, before we all went to bed, after he gave me the enema, we blew up the tub.
Oh,
The
good.
birth tub. So it was just sitting in the living room and we got the whole thing ready. We put the liner in, we did the whole thing because I was like, this is happening like soonish and I just want this thing freaking ready because I'm going to freak out if I can't get in it. And I know I could just get in my bathtub, but it's small. Like I'm almost 6 feet tall and I just couldn't extend my legs out all the way when I'm in that bathtub. And I really, really wanted to get in the birth pool. Like I just wanted that. So anyway, so the tub was all ready. It was just sitting in the living room. The kids are all in their pajamas. They're like watching a show. You are over. We told Andrea, like, it's not time yet, but, be ready soon. Like, we keep thinking it's going to be soon. It's not.
The birth that never came.
Exactly. And so then hold on. I'm just trying to snap my bra back up. You know how that goes. It takes a minute.
Yeah, the microphone is placed perfectly over your boob.
Oh, great. So
for any of those who will see the video that we can't seem to ever get posted.
Eventually these will be on YouTube.
They absolutely will.
Uh-oh, little baby girl. There you go. Oh, you're so freaking cute. Okay, so I'm waiting in the bedroom just by myself taking contractions. Janice and her assistant are out in the living room. Wes is filling up the tub and I was going to come out there once the tub was ready. And I was like, something, picked up a little bit with these contractions because I was moaning and groaning. And like when I would start to feel that I was having one, I was starting to kind of feel that like, oh no, like, okay, I need to be in a good position. Like, how am I going to handle this? Like, how am I going to manage this? Like coping with them was getting harder. So they were definitely stronger and stronger. So, oh my gosh, you little squeaky girl. So cute. Okay. So then,
good one.
That's a good burp. She definitely is a spitter if we don't get that proper burp out. So anyway, then I'm just kind of like rolling around on the ball. I'm having a moment. He's getting things ready. The kids are up. They're eating, like whatever. And then I was ready to get into the tub and it was ready. So I come out and it's probably like around 9-ish a.m. And the sun, it was like a beautiful, clear
I know, it was so pretty
day. It was so gorgeous. And the sun was shining into our living room through the window at this angle that was just like so beautiful. And the girls, Gage wasn't even awake yet. My son was like dead asleep. He's like a teenager already. He's not even 8 years old. And it's 9 a.m. He's not even awake. And there's like a million people in the house. He could sleep through a concert.
Yeah, he's so Kaffa. Avi is the same. Yeah,
he's so funny. So anyway, the girls are on the standing on the couch and you snapped this photo that was like one of my favorite photos ever. And
I'm so happy.
It's so beautiful. And like the light ray was coming in and
because I knew you wanted to name her Sunny. I didn't know if you were going to decide on that, but I was like, oh, it's like Sunny's here. Cause it was like the two girls and then the sun was right there. And it was just,
and it was making like this big orb of light.
Yes.
Too.
It was so cool.
And I could even just like tell, and I could feel it on my, like the back of my kind of cheek in my head. And I felt like it was like, we wanted to reserve the ability to change the name choice in case she came out and she really didn't feel like a Sunday or a Sunny. But that was what we loved the whole pregnancy. And so it was like, if at all she seems like this, we're going to choose it. And I remembered in that moment thinking, oh, bless you. Thinking like, it's like she's here. It's like she's claiming her name right now. She's like
and the
saying,
fact that she was born on a sunny morning.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's so rare for babies. Anyways, keep going. For people who don't know.
It was the full moon. It was the day of the full moon. And it was the eclipse. There was a lunar eclipse and it was the Hunter full moon.
She knew.
I was just like, Gabby, dang it, my friend who knew, auspiciously knew that this is what was going to happen. So anyways, the girls were just like, looking up at me, and Gage eventually woke up, and I remember just telling like them at one point, I don't know exactly when it was, but telling them like the baby's coming like today.
Yeah.
Like right now. That's why I'm in this tub. And them just being kind of like, we've been talking about this for so long, and it's kind of an abstract idea. They don't really know what I'm talking about. They're 3 and 4 years old. So it was just sweet. They were like, really? Like, and they just kind of kept talking to me, and you were trying to like field them away from me.
Oh my gosh, because they were like, when is the baby here? Is it coming now? Is it like,
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I cannot imagine how this is pulling you out of labor land.
I know, but I never.
You handled it fine. I probably would have like lost my mind because.
Well, this is the sensory thing of like sound. Sound doesn't really bother me. Yeah. What bothered me though so much was Sloan jumping on the table.
Oh my gosh, I know. I was like, stop doing
that was a little bit later on, but yeah, like the tub edge was close to the couch, and she kept jumping from the couch to the edge of it and letting it sort of bounce her off, and it would like reverberate the whole tub and pull me out, and I would be like kind of in the zone in between contractions, and then this like jolt to the edge of the tub would happen, and I was like like that felt so bad, but the sounds in the room I could have cared less. But anyways, so okay, Janice and her assistant had left at this point. They were like giving us some space. They were just going to go get coffee, and I'm for like, I don't know, like 30 or 45 minutes or something. They were still kind of in that 8 to 10 minute mark. And then they changed to every 5 minutes. I remember you saying, you were like, I'm going to start timing your contractions. Like, they seem like they're getting closer together. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And they got more intense. And so then I was like, hey, I think we need to call Janice back. So she came back right away, and they were just kind of sitting there. And then Wes was kind of having a hard time. I was starting to need his help. Like they were getting really intense, and he was having a hard time both supporting me and the kids. And it was getting clear that like, this is like going to be hard, a little bit tricky. And I really wanted you focusing on your own experience, but then also, if anything, taking some like,
I was videoing the entire thing.
I know. Thank you so much.
I was like, I don't want to miss anything just in case you want it.
I like love that you did that. It's so special to me because that's just like, I don't know, birth photography. It's such an important thing to me. I know some people think it's kind of like whatever, but I love it. So anyway, so Wes is kind of like, hey, I think I'm going to call your mom to me. He says that to me. And what's funny is that I feel like I had an intuition that my mom was going to be at this birth the whole time. And I don't know why, because it wasn't part of like the original plan. I was sort of feeling overwhelmed by like the idea of trying to coordinate like additional people. And she was at my birth with Gage. And so it was like, but I sort of had this feeling. I was like, I don't know why, but I feel like my mom is going to be there, and I like, it'll just all work out, if it doesn't happen, like whatever happens is going to be, perfect in the way that it needs to happen anyways. But so he calls her, and she lives about 35 minutes away, but I was like, yeah, great idea. Cause I could see we needed some backup here. And, so I'm like coping through them. I'm starting to make really loud noises during my exhales as the contractions are happening. And, it's getting to that. If you've been in birth before, there comes a point where like, even if you're moaning through them, like you kind of, your voice and your tones can start to get really high pitched. And my midwife at one point was like, you're running away from it. Like,
I remember her saying that. I was like, oh wow, you're so
right. I mean, I was like, oh, and it's getting high, and she wants it to sound like, like, oh, a long, lower tone. And it really is so true. Like you are so much more in control when it's a high. Sorry, there's just like my whole boob out. I don't know how I'll edit this for YouTube.
All right, whatever. Boobs feed babies.
They do. That's the whole point.
Yep.
So anyways, and I'm like, okay, all right. I'm like really trying to focus on keeping my tones low and staying calm. And I'm kind of like moving around in the tub, and I'm like, holy crap, this is getting like really hard, and I'm tired. And all of a sudden it like hits me. And I just have this like, start having this huge emotional release. And it was right before this emotional release that I had was right before the contraction that I had. That was the first pushy contraction. And apparently, because I talked about it with my midwife later, she's like, that's really common, that like right before pushing kind of transitions into that you just have this moment. And so in terms of like having a quote unquote transition, I never had like slamming contractions back to back to back to back. There always was time in between. What do you think was like the closest interval that you saw?
Probably like 3 minutes, but that was maybe at the very end. I mean, they were even not even consistent. When I was monitoring them, they were 5, and then they were 10, and then they were 8, and then they were 10 and 12. It
Yeah,
was like, what is happening? But then all of a sudden, yeah, something just changed, and you were feeling pushy, and that's why you called Janice, because you called her and you're like, oh, I'm
oh,
starting to
that's
feel
right. That
pushy
was
contractions.
yes.
And so they came, and I didn't know you were experiencing anything different. It seemed similar to me, but there was a time when you seemed to just be a little bit more focused, where you couldn't come out as much and deal with the kids, even though you were still kind of dealing with them more than I would have imagined. In labor, I'm like, oh my God, is she okay? Because you would like have a contraction and then come out and be like, ha, like you would just seem totally normal, which I'm like, like, is this actually happening anytime soon? But yeah, I think you were just kind of handling it like a champ. But I remember when it kind of transitioned and it started to get more intense, and then you seemed to be like maybe struggling a little bit more, but I would have never identified that you were struggling. Really, I would never like put that word. I don't know how your experience of that was in the 30 minutes, before baby came.
Yeah, well, so I think it was like all kind of like status quo, and yes, it was getting more intense. But then, so yeah, when I said, oh, that was like a little bit pushy, and then we called her back, that was before the first actual real pushy contraction. But I remember, I know what you're talking about, and it was the sensation of I could tell I was getting close to fully dilated because I could feel and that my hips were literally further apart than normal. Like I could tell that my bones were not in their normal spot. And it was such a vulnerable,
Yeah.
scary feeling. And I was like, holy, like open, just an
Mm-hmm.
openness. And I was like, whoa, there's just like a tinge, just a tinge of her maybe moving down a little bit. So I really wanted Janice to come back. But then with this emotional release thing that happened, and I'm like kind of weeping, and Wes is holding my hand, and he's trying to give me like, be really encouraging. And he's like, you're so close, Moses. Like, this is the last one, like the last one. And he was talking about like, this is like the last baby, the last birth. And I like remember opening my eyes and locking eyes with him and just being like, oh, this is the last one. Like it's so true. I need to dig deep right now. Like I like, this is, I'm never going to do this again. And like, I love it, but it is so hard. And that definitely, like we both had a little cry. He started crying a little bit too. He's a real sneaky incognito crier, but he also like never cries. It's so sweet. He only really cries around birth. And he cried the whole next day after she was born. Just
Oh,
he'd come in and like give me food and just start bawling, and then he'd like go out, and then he'd come back to
so
me.
sweet.
He's so sweet. But okay, so anyways, then I like bam, I had this contraction where she moves down like so much, and my body was pushed, and I was like, no, 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 and Janice was like, yes, 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 yes. She's over at the table. Okay, the other thing that's so funny about my midwife, I love her so much. I had told her my intention for this birth was really to be like quite hands off, and she already is a very hands off practitioner, and I didn't feel like she was overwhelming or too much during my birth with Sloan at all. I just really had this like vision that I wanted of very independent,
Mm-hmm.
almost like the sense of a free birth, or like, just it's like fourth time around. I'm like, unless there's something going on, I just really want to be in the zone. I also really wanted to catch the baby myself. This whole idea of no cervical no cervical checks. Like I wanted to just fully lean into trusting my body, which is funny because I really like didn't trust my body, or I did trust, but I was trying to analyze and figure it out and find answers. And I think I realized, through this whole process, like you're sometimes just not going to get that.
Yeah,
And
so you did learn how to trust your body.
yes, maybe that's why it took 10 freaking days.
Yeah.
She's like, until you learn, Mom, I'm not coming. I don't know. So anyways, I have this like huge, she's moving down. My hips are so far apart. I can feel it. And I was like, oh boy, like here we go. And then right after that, my mom comes in, and she kind of like, she forgot her phone in the car or something like that. So she comes in and says hi to the kids. My girls are like so happy to see her. And I don't know, Gage was like not in the room. And then she goes back out to the car or something and comes back in. And then I was like, okay, yeah, like get everybody, like
Yeah.
Wes, call like, go find Gage wherever he went. He was like in the other room playing a video game or something. And I don't know if I said call Andrea in that moment, but I was like hopeful that someone was going to call Andrea.
Yeah,
And,
you
like,
did. And he
oh, I
did.
did. Okay,
Mhm.
good. Because I felt bad. I was like, oh my gosh, no, like she's going to miss it. It's like happening right now, you know?
Mhm.
And I also have always had this like moment in each of my births where it's getting really close to the baby coming out, and and I'm sure a lot of people can relate, where you have this feeling where you're like, oh my gosh, it kind of like dawns on you, this baby has to come out of my vagina. And this is so scary. Like, it
Mhm.
is such a scary, big feeling, like, holy crap. And so I'm just like panting. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. And like, you know, Wes is kind of giving me a pep talk. Well, he had like left really quick to go get Gage and do some different things. And he comes back and I'm like, whoa, okay, it's game time. And from that moment on until she was born, which was 30 minutes, it was the most uncomfortable I think I've ever been in my entire life. And I'm not trying to be like, what's it called? Like, exaggerate that or be dramatic. I I still don't know why. Again, I mean, this all just goes back to like, I don't know why. I don't know what happened. I don't know the answers. Sometimes there are no answers, but it wasn't just like pain. It wasn't like I was feeling more intense pain. I was, but that wasn't it. It was a part of it for sure, but it was like skin crawly. Like, I felt like a trapped animal in my body. Every time I'd have a contraction, it's like she's bearing down, like she's moving down, and my body is doing that, like, like gut, you know, J breath, kind of like gut punch, feeling like it's like the air would just get sucked out of me and up into a involuntary push, like fetal ejection reflex, sort of,
Mhm.
except it wasn't as smooth as the fetal ejection reflex that I had experienced with at least Savi. For sure, she was a very quick one, but even
Yeah.
Sloan, my body pushed her out. Like, I nudged her a couple times, but my body just pushed. With Sunny, it was like she was coming down, but then in between contractions, she was like moving and rotating and kicking me, and like I'd be like, oh, I was like, what is that? Like, what is going on, you know?
Yeah.
And it felt like it would almost trigger another contraction. Like, when they move and they make a big movement, it almost does sometimes trigger a contraction. So like,
Mhm.
I just felt like it was sort of like I was in this constant contraction almost for like 30 full minutes.
Yeah.
And there was two moments that I remember where it was a true break, where there was no pain, no intensity, no pressure, where I could finally like kind of catch my breath. And I know in the video that you took, I look like I'm not. I look like I'm working for sure. Like, I'm working hard. But
Well, if you watch the full video, you see it more. To make the shortened video that I did, I didn't like
right.
show all of it.
But I even watched that whole video, and I'm like,
Oh.
no, this is not exemplifying what I felt
I
inside.
know. I was like, I don't know why you said that you were struggling. I mean, I know obviously you felt it, but I was like, you seemed like you were just doing a great job.
No, I know, and that's what my mom said too. My mom is a retired labor and delivery nurse, and so she called me a couple days afterwards. She's like, I just have to tell you, like, you were made to birth, like, you're so good, da da da. And I'm like, and she's like, I've seen hundreds of births, Morgan. Like, this is not how they go, da da da. I'm like, Mom, no, I was dying. I was like
Yeah.
losing my mind inside, and it was like skin crawly feeling. Like, I couldn't get away from it, and I was starting to panic. Like, I was
Yeah.
actually starting to like really lose my cool.
And you
And
asked me to get aconite.
yeah. So then I'm in my mind, and I'm like trying to move around to these different positions. On top of that, I kept getting a leg cramp. And so I was like, my legs were cramping. I was trying to move my legs around, trying to like just get control over my breathing. Wes is squeezing my hands so hard. I'm squeezing his so hard. He's like trying to coach me in breathing and calm me down. And I can hear my midwife from the table. Oh, that's what I was going to say about her is I had told her I really wanted this hands-off birth, and she had told me that she'd had a dream where she just kind of sat at my dining room table and watched the whole thing happen in the living room. And I was like, I would love that. So I told her that. And so she like literally just sat at the dining room table the whole time because she's so respectful of boundaries. Like, she stood up, and like when I was crowning, and she's kind of like keeping a watchful eye. She's definitely watching, and she's watching all the signs of everything. But she also wanted to give me space. And I just think that was like so sweet and beautiful, because that's, I think, how the practitioners should be. They should be a fine dance and balance, obviously, like if there's something going on. And that's what I told her. I was like, if you see something, obviously get in. But like, I envision a situation where it's like really Wes and I working through it. The kids are around and I'm pulling the baby up by myself. That's like what was important to me for this time, if it was able to happen. Of course, being flexible, because who freaking knows, right? It's birth.
Right.
But anyway, so I'm a wild animal in my body. I'm trapped in a cage. I'm going through an exorcism. I'm losing it. And I know I'm losing it. And I'm like trying to do like horse slips, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's taking every cell of focus, every bit of energy in me to just take a normal breath. Like I was freaking out. So I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden, it just comes to me, because I'm like, what can help me right now? Like I'm going off the rails, and I know it. And if I don't get my act together, this is going to just really suck until this baby comes out, and I need to calm down. And I just was having such a hard time. So all of a sudden it just boom pops in my mind. I'm like, Leah, get the aconite.
I know. Well, and it's so funny because to me, you looked so calm and like handling it. So when you told me like homeopathic aconitum, which is typically a remedy that we give for fright and, you know, panic and all of these things. And I didn't know that that's what's going on for you. So I was like, oh, maybe this is like a remedy I don't know about that like helps with birth transition or something.
No, I totally wanted it because I was like, I wasn't scared. Scared's not the right word. I felt so overwhelmed by the sensations. I think my mind was really starting to waver due to the lack of sleep and just the level of like hard work that was happening. And it was like, you know, if you're just not on your game, not like I have an amazing, strong meditative practice and I'm super, super grounded all the time. Like, I don't think I'm that person, but in labor, I usually,
yeah, you're actually really good.
I do. Well, thanks. I mean, I do feel like I can control my breath really well. That's my biggest tool. And I lost it. And so anyway, you're like, okay. And you go and you get it, and I take it, and who knows if it helped. I don't know. But I mean, so this whole time she's like moving down. She's not crowning yet. And I kind of started to feel her like bulge at my perineum just a little bit, which is, again, such a scary feeling. Not scary. Scary's not the right word. Like vulnerable, because you're just like, holy moly, like this is this baby is coming out of this tiny little hole. Like, how is this gonna happen? So I like kind of give it like a little bit of a push. I'm like, like just a little, and nothing happens. Like it didn't feel good. It didn't feel right. It felt like, I don't know, maybe she's like too high still, but like literally no connection either to my pelvic floor or like it just did nothing. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to try that again. I'm trying to get into these different positions. At one point I was kind of on my hands and knees, and that felt even more open, too much open. I needed to have a little bit of closure. So I get on my side. I really love side lying for pushing phases. And I know I'm in the water, but still, even if you're out on like a bed or a couch or something, the side lying pose gets your pelvis in a very open, wide, great position for birth, while also not using gravity which could maybe exacerbate things. Maybe sometimes you need gravity, but it could also, you know, contribute to tearing. Like, you have a lot of control over the way that you crown when you're side lying. I highly suggest it for like most situations and people. If you needed to know like my top number one pushing tip, I guess it would just be like, get in a good side lying position, have somebody probably hold your top leg, because it's really hard to do it yourself. So anyway, so there I am. I'm like kind of, and then she starts to kind of crown a little bit, like just the back of her head starts to come out, and everybody's like, oh, here she comes. And then she's in between contractions, she sucks back
in. I'm like, oh, where'd the baby go?
Yeah, I know. And she just kind of like oozed back in. It was such a slow, like I just felt her like slipping in, and I was like, oh, okay. Excuse me. So anyways, then the next one, I feel her, you know, coming on again, and I'm like over it. I'm like, here we freaking go. I'm gunning it. I'm going for it. Like, I'm very, very cognizant to crown super slow.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to tear. But I just was like, here we go. So she's like doing that little back of her head bit again. And I'm kind of holding her there and like breathing. And then I can hear Janice being like, okay, like give it a break. And I'm like, nope. I'm going for it. And so I did kind of like, I let it stretch a little bit just over the back of her head. And then I was like, I'm going. So I'm like pushing. And it's like, she just slowly oozed her head out. It wasn't quick, but she did all the way her head was born. And I could hear the kids being like, oh, like, there's the baby's head. Like, she's coming. And that was really sweet. Like, they all moved over to the side of the tub where they could see from like the way my legs were. And I like look down and I see all this dark hair. And I was like, oh, and it just immediately in that moment, a lot of that skin crawly, awful feeling was gone. It was like once her head was out, everything was so much better. But man, up until that, I have never been more challenged than those minutes. And it was a long time to feel like that. I mean, it's not really 30 minutes to push, but geez, I did have the thought too during that time is if this is how a lot of women are experiencing all of labor because they're really kind of like panicking and, we know about the fear, tension, pain cycle. So like when you're scared, you tense up more. When you're more tense, you experience more labor pain because of the way that the muscles and everything are working. It was like, this would be awful to experience an entire labor feeling like I did. And I could totally see how people would be like, absolutely not. I really that wasn't empowering. That was really crappy and whatever. I could I can relate if that is how it is going for some people. And I'm sure that it is, if you're not feeling like connected to your breath and like to just calm you down. It was like my nervous system got super ramped up for some reason.
Yeah.
Like I had this big emotional release and then she was coming down and something happened. Maybe she like triggered, how like our hips hold like memory and hold traumas and stuff. And I don't really like have any trauma, thankfully, very privileged that way that I could like connect to, but something happened, like something was
or even like neurologically, like mental, emotionally and neurologically, that skin crawly feeling is very nervy. Like maybe she was like in your nervy and you're having low back pain that's like discal related. Like it could have all been very nervy related.
So much in my back. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I forgot about that. There was a lot in my back at that time. And because she was like, honestly, what it felt to me is that she did like a 180 spin or even like a 360. Like she was rotating, like I could feel her whole body. So maybe, she was in some kind of weird position.
Yeah.
Or during the pushing, she like was probably fine. And then she kind of like corkscrewed and got into a weird position and then moved back. It was so many huge movements and it was so uncomfortable. Like whatever was going on, it was awful. So anyways, but it was short-lived. And I tell this, I live to tell the tale. I'm not trying to freak anybody out. I'm just being super honest. Like this is my experience. And in 4 births, I've never had that feeling. I've never felt totally out of control like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wasn't totally out of control. I was on the precipice though of about to be like completely and I knew, and it was like, it was building. And I was like, holy crap, I'm watching myself flail. I'm flailing. And then her head came out and it like all stopped.
Oh, so great.
So, or maybe it was partially the acne. I don't know. But either way, so her head comes out. I'm like, the kids are all excited. I look down and I look at Wes and I'm just like, oh my God, like it's fine. I'm like, okay, we're really, really close now. And then I like was reaching, I was touching her head and I could feel her little tiny ears.
I know.
It just makes it so real. It's so hard to think that you have this full baby inside you until those kinds of moments. So anyway, then I expected her to rotate the way that all my the last 3 have, where they've sort of done this it's the last cardinal movement that the babies do to get out of the birth canal. And they just kind of do this like rotation. She didn't do that. Oh, right as her head was coming out, I felt her water bag break. So my water hadn't broken at all. So it broke right when she was probably like half of her head was born. And I felt just this little pop and like kind of it wasn't real obvious. That's exactly how Sloane's was too. Her water broke right as her head was being born. And I always wonder about this. I was thinking about this the other night in the middle of the night. If a baby is born in the bag like that, or right when their head comes out, they're not getting any vaginal microbiome.
Not significant amounts, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, so what's up with that? Nobody talks about that.
Yeah, no, they don't, but they should.
They should. I mean, I
they'll
wonder-
get some because they're still kind of in and around your vagina, sort of. But yeah, I would do probably a vaginal swab for a baby that's born in, isn't it the col or something?
in call, yeah,
In
like if
col.
they're fully in call. But it's like, even because that's really common. I feel like just nobody brings to attention the fact that like that baby is not actually really getting that much bacteria from being exposed to the vagina. But anyways, so I'm like waiting there, and I don't have a contraction yet, but I kind of gave a little nudge and she's not moving, and I was kind of like, huh. And I hear Janice say, "Oh, I can see a cord." So I like look down and I see it, and I couldn't tell where it was, if it was like around her head or her neck. I mean, so I start to kind of like pull the loop up just like a couple inches, and she goes like, no, like don't mess with it. Like it's fine. And it wasn't around her neck. It was just presenting with her head. It was like kind of just next to her. But she didn't want me to pull on it because she's like, we don't know how long it is, and you don't need to like move it yet. Like just it's fine. So then I'm just sitting there with her head out for what felt like a minute or so, like maybe 2. What do you think?
I mean, I don't know if it was that long. Maybe like 30 seconds to a minute. Was this when you rotated onto your hands and knees?
Yeah. Maybe,
I,
okay, in my mind it probably felt like it was longer, but
yeah.
So I tried to give a push, and she just was like, there was nothing happening. And then I felt one shoulder slip out, but it wasn't with a contraction. It just kind of like happened. And then I looked up at Janice and I was like, Janice, is she stuck? And she's like being all dramatic. And she's like, no, she's fine. But if you want to get into hands and knees, like, or like into a runner's lunge, she'll come right out. And so I was like, okay. And I have seen videos of women with a head hanging out of their vagina getting into a different position, like maybe getting out of a tub if there was like a shoulder dystocia or something, or like some reason. And I've thought to myself hundreds of times, there is no way I could do that. There is no way. Like my hips are not together. Like I couldn't even stand up if I wanted to. And then, man, I just hopped to it. I got in that runner's lunge. And it wasn't even hard. It wasn't hard at all. I have no memory of difficulty.
Yeah, you seemed like it was totally easy to just switch.
It was. Like, what in the world? How? Like, my hips are not even like together. I don't know. That was wild. But I just got into it.
They're held together by your skin. Your skin is just keeping you all together.
Yeah. So I get in this runner's lunge, and I say to the room, because now I feel like I'm in this position where the baby's going to come out behind me. And so Janice is walking over, and I'm like, please, nobody catch her. Like, I want to catch her. I want to do it. Like, don't nobody touch the baby, you know?
Yeah.
Janice is like, I'll just push her right between your legs, like, so she doesn't come out backwards, you know, because otherwise she was going to shoot out behind me.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciated that. So I gave a big push, and the rest of her body came out, and she just kind of like pushed her up between my legs. And I reached up and I grabbed her. And when I grabbed her, you're not supposed to do this. And I just, you know, in the moment I didn't think about it. But when you're pulling a baby out of a birth tub, ideally you rotate them so that their face is down, so that they're not getting this like big face full of water, so that they're kind of coming up with their head first, like, or the back of their head. And yeah, I definitely didn't do that. And she had her mouth like wide open, and it looked like she was like crying underneath the water, sort of. And I was kind of freaked out by that. But that isn't really, it's not like something that happens. It's almost not even possible, because the sensation of air on their face is what triggers them to breathe. I just remember, and there is a photo that Andrea caught of her with her mouth wide open under the water right before I pull her up. And anyway, so then as soon as I pulled her up, she just like started crying right away. It was like the sensation of the air, you know, immediately. And oh my God, that is the biggest relief of your whole freaking life. Especially when it's been a long process.
Such a long labor. Oh my God.
Yeah. And such a long labor, like 32 hours from when I had those first like actual real contractions in like the bloody show. And so it's like, I mean, I was not expecting it to be so long, you know, and
right.
I was really pulling people along on the journey with me on Instagram. And so many people were saying like, well, you know, you're having all this prodromal labor, and like probably when you have the birth, when it actually happens, it's gonna be so fast. It's just gonna be like so fast. And I was like, yeah, you're right, because I've had really fast labors and da 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 da. Like, of course, here I am, I'm dilating. So like whenever it happens, it's really gonna be like just so fast and so easy. No, that is not how it was. And it's just kind of like funny, but she was just so cute right away. And you know what's so cool is that like she looks exactly like the baby I had imagined in my head.
Oh.
And I don't know. I mean, I've never tried to like imagine what the other kids were going to look like really, like to this extent, but it was one of the things I was doing every night when I would go to bed during those prodromal labor days was like imagining a little baby next to me and like trying to like talk to her and tell her, I'm ready for you. Like, we want you. It's safe out here. You can come. You can come anytime. We want you to come right now. Like, I was trying different things, you know, like being really connected to her. And my husband and I had said through the whole pregnancy, I think this one's going to look like a combination of Gage and Savi, but with blue eyes. And I don't know why we would even say that.
That's
because
so
if
funny.
anything, yeah, his genetics, he's like darker and
Mhm.
brown eyes, brown hair, olive skin tone. Like, I'm the like blonde, blue eyed. Like, you would think his would take over more. And so far, 2 of our 3 at that time were more like him. And I don't know. Anyway, it's just crazy because she is a combination of Gage and Savi with blue eyes. Like,
oh my
there's
God,
a
it's
little
because
bit
you're
of fun.
intuitive. You're so much more intuitive than you think.
I think
You're so powerful. You're more powerful than the moon.
I'm more powerful than the moon. The moon doesn't affect me because
Yeah.
my mind.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is amazing. I'm going to scroll through some of the questions that people sent in to see if there's anything you didn't answer.
Okay, cool.
Unless you have anything else you want to say as like the end of your birth.
The only thing that I'll say is that I hate birthing the placenta. I always hate that part. And it was really tough for me to hold her and support myself in the tub because I felt like I couldn't sit on my butt even in the tub weightless because it just felt so uncomfortable. Like my hips were not in the right spot, you know? And so I was trying to like hold myself up with one hand and hold her, and like the water level was quite high, and so like her face kept getting close to the water, but then I'm having these contractions. My whole body was kind of like tremoring, not shaking violently, but like I was shaking, and I was like super happy. We were like looking at her and kissing her and stuff like that, but then I was like, oh my God, this placenta has to come out right now. And so it was born probably the earliest of all of my kids because I just like worked my way to get it out, and that is also the biggest relief of your life is getting the placenta out. And it looked really funky to me. One of the other things I really wanted to do this pregnancy was to eat a piece of the placenta freshly postpartum, like in a smoothie or something. And it did not look like a normal placenta to me. And Janice told me later that there was just clots all over the top of it, and that she thought was actually a good sign that, like, you know, my body was starting to clot in things when it was just sitting there in utero, but it looked funky and it kind of felt like it was falling apart. Like I tried to in the bowl. So anyway, I was not appetized to eat any of it, but we did keep them attached for about an hour, which is what I was wanting to do. I just wanted to keep them attached for like a little while. And so, yeah, she was born at 11:33, which the peak of the full moon was at 11:30.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
So that was something that was kind of wild. So like, I think she just had this like really distinct plan of when she wanted to come. And
so she is controlled by the moon, maybe not you.
Yeah. There you go. Exactly.
She's a moon baby, Sunny the moon baby.
Sunny the moon baby. Yeah. And then her cord was between her legs at one point, and Gage is standing behind me, and he's like, oh, it is a boy. And just for like a second, I was like, wait, because I didn't even look. I didn't look at her.
Right.
And like, I just, you know, like trusted that she was a girl. And I was like, oh no, you know, that's the cord. And then also Savi had like active hand, foot, and mouth vesicles on her hands during this whole thing. And she like reaches over in one of the videos, she reaches over to try to touch the top of Sunny's head. And I just like bat her hand away. And I feel bad about that, but it's just one of those things that's really hard to manage. Like, how do you protect a newborn and also allow sibling bonding to happen? But like, you have to balance it. Like that was an active. So anyway, that kind of.
You did a great job. And
thanks,
I guess it's going around. We visited a preschool today, and it was signs all over active hand, foot, and mouth.
Oh,
yeah. Like, oh God. Okay. Let me just rapid fire some of these questions. So, now on the flip side of birth, is there anything you wish you did or didn't do differently, didn't do for birth?
Anything I wish I did
or didn't do?
I guess I just wish I didn't go in having such like strong expectations that it was going to go like my other births.
Yeah.
Because I do think that tripped me up in a headspace. I think I went into my third birth going, hey, third births are wild cards. That's what everybody says. And I've had one long birth and one slow birth. So like, I don't know, it'll just be what it is. And then it was like wonderful because it was kind of in between. And with this one, I think I had like really strongly attached to like that it was going to go a certain way, or that she was going to be born around her due date like the others, and she was born at 41 weeks. Like I just think I attached too much to those prior experiences, which I think is a normal and natural thing to do, because that's like what history would show me for my
Right.
gestational information.
Mhm.
But probably it's better to go in completely open-minded every single birth and have no expectations.
Amazing. Okay, is active labor and transition the same?
So transition is a part of active labor. So
Okay, so someone wants to know, how long did transition last and how long were you in active labor?
oh my God, well, I don't even know, because
No one knows. It's a mystery.
I was having active labor contractions, but like not in an active labor pattern of every 5 minutes apart. Like, if this had been a labor where I was planning on going to a hospital and they were like, oh, well, only come in once your contractions are every 5 minutes apart,
Yeah.
I would have never gone to the hospital.
Right.
Like
You would have been a car delivery.
yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I think I would say probably my contractions got to like where like I was having to ohm and moan and stuff through them probably at like 3 a.m., 2 or 3 a.m. of the day she was born. She was born at 11:30. So like 9 hours maybe of that. And then transition, I mean, I didn't really have a transition. Like
Yeah.
maybe it was just a couple of contractions that were closer together before that pushing one. And that, because transitions from 8 to 10 centimeters. And like, yes, I know that I know that I was at 6 to 7 centimeters at 6 a.m. and she wasn't born until 11. So like, but I didn't have that classic transition pattern where it's like contractions on top of each other and it's like super hard. And like, they're really like everything just stayed really far apart, which,
Yeah.
my midwife kept saying, she's like, well, it's great, you're getting rest in between. And
Yeah.
yes, while I see that and I understand that, it actually isn't like that much easier though,
Yeah.
because I didn't have the like wash of hormones and the endorphins, to kind of like drug me and get me out of my head and get me.
I was going to say that might be why it was so hard for you, because there's probably that pain and nerve blocking piece from the oxytocin and everything that's like heightened that you just didn't have. So it's like your nerves were like vulnerable. Like
I was just feeling it all so raw. Yeah,
exactly.
There was like no, yeah, exactly.
Did you check for GBS or worry about it?
I did not. So I was GBS positive with Gage and I was negative with Savi. And then I haven't even tested for the last two girls. And I just sort of have leaned into it with my intuition. I would if I felt like worried about it. But because I know so well what the symptoms are, I mean, it's so rare. You have to like really understand the numbers. And I just wasn't worried about it.
Okay.
There's certain things that I am worried about and there's certain things I'm not. And that's just one of them.
Cool. How do you keep your affirmations clear when the contractions get crazy and don't let up?
Well, I would say, oh, you just focus on your breathing and then everything's fine. but I lost my way with this one a little bit. So I do feel like I can understand people in that experience now better than I have in the past. But, having other people in the room to give you perspective that you're like not dying. This is something that Ina May talks about a lot in her book, Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, is like one of the main roles of support people in the midwife is to just validate the experience for the woman in labor that like you're okay. You might not feel like you're okay, but you are okay. Like this is okay. This is normal. This is part of birth. Like all of the things that are happening to you, although to you they feel so big and scary and worrisome and sometimes like it can feel like that, it's all normal and fine. And so that support is huge. I'm a big words of affirmation person when it comes to those kinds of hard moments. And usually I would say, yeah, like just really staying super duper duper focused on your breath. And yeah, but I'm not perfect at it either.
Cool. Okay. What did you eat and drink during and immediately after?
So the beef quesadilla.
I mean, it actually sounds really good. I can't have gluten or dairy, so I would love to have a beef quesadilla. Sorry. That's okay. It was really good. Living vicariously through your birth food.
Well, so I had like a dry boba bar and a meat stick earlier, and then like in between quite hard contractions, I was eating this beef quesadilla, and then right afterwards, so it behooved me at like 3 a.m. when I was sitting there having contractions. All right, well, I'm gonna have a baby today, and at some point probably, and I should get out one of these like big packs of turkey chili that I had made, that I had deep frozen. So I like went into our garage in the middle of the night and got out the deep freezer, got out the soup, and I put it on the counter so it could thaw. So that's what I had as my first postpartum meal, and I'm so happy I did that because it was like the thickest, most like dense, multi-vegetable, multi-meat. It's like turkey, beef, all these, potatoes,
so
carrots, like, oh, it was so good. It was delicious. So that's what I ate as my first meal. And I ate it pretty much like, I don't know what, like 30 minutes within her being born. They really just pack you in with food like right away. The midwives do. Like, okay, it's time for you to eat. Like, okay.
Yeah. Okay, last question. And then there's a bunch of other questions, but a lot of them have to do sort of with postpartum. So maybe we should do another episode in the future answering questions about postpartum and baby stuff.
Okay.
How did you feel the most supported this time around?
During the birth?
I guess,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, like similar to the other question, just with I really was super supported by Wes at the end, like squeezing my hand and telling me and reminding me to focus on my breath, to keep the tones low, to relax my face, like all of those kinds of things that like help you feel in control, and to also lessen the pain and the pressure and the intensity of everything. And then just squeezing his hand was like key. In the past, if I've had back labor or something like that, counter pressure is amazing, but this time around, he was like my rock at the end. And I really didn't need him until the last, just pretty much like maybe the last 45 minutes of the whole birth. But then I really did need him. Like at one point he was down the hallway with one of the kids or something, and I started feeling a contraction. I was like, Wes, I like called him for him. I was like, you come here. Like I needed him to squeeze my hand and help hold me up in the tub too, because it's like kind of awkward. The positioning and everything. Yeah. So that's kind of what I would say for that.
Oh, amazing. This has been such a powerful story. I think there's so many lessons that you have portrayed to other women and tips. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, wait, sorry. I'm seeing a lot more questions. I don't know if you're scrolling down to the bottom there.
Oh,
I know this is a longer podcast, guys. I'm seeing one that's like vitamin K.
Oh, yeah. No, but a lot of that has to do postpartum. Oh, I don't see birth tub. Oh, like, here. This is, yes. I didn't see that one.
Like when did you deliver the placenta?
Okay, yes. I missed that whole section. And some of them do have to do most with postpartum, but anything you want to answer here. Did you end up birthing in a squish space? That was kind of answered. Yes. Some of them you answered a little bit, but
so if I prefer a longer or a shorter birth, I would say probably, although it's so intense, if I had to pick one or the other, I would say a shorter birth. Mm-hmm. And then in terms of delivering the placenta, it delivered quick. Okay, did my midwife assist? So I delivered it in the water, yes. So one of these questions is like, did you deliver it in the water? Did your midwife assist you? So yes, it was born in the water, and my midwife was really like helpful with reminding me to do everything myself, because I had told her that was one of my goals. So she said at one point, go ahead and reach and feel the cord. Is it loose? Can you kind of traction your placenta a little bit? Like not pulling it out, but like, can you just give a little bit of pressure and see what happens? And I was like, sure. And so I kind of tried, and I was like, no, I don't think so. And so then the next time I felt a contraction, I bared down, and then I did it, and I could feel it was slipping out. So I was like, oh, here it comes. So then it came all the way out, and I was just holding it in this like ball right outside of my vagina. And she was like, okay, now you need to unwrap it from the membranes. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And she's like, well, sometimes the membranes take a minute to let go, and you have to kind of like unwrap the placenta around it a little bit, and then and you don't have to, but like you can kind of do that, and it'll sort of help release them. Like it's like a little bit tangled. And so I kind of start to like with one hand, because I'm holding her in one hand, kind of try to like move this ball of organ around. And I was like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. You go ahead and do it. And so she was just like, okay. And she just, dove her hands into the water and took care of that. But so that was kind of like a funny moment too, because she was really just trying to like guide me on doing everything myself, which I appreciate. It just, I was like out of it. I was like, nope, I don't want to do anything myself anymore.
Yeah.
You can do it
You're
all
like,
for me.
I'm done. Okay, the birth tub you used, is there a brand?
Oh, it was called it was just what my midwife had. It was like a classic just blue birth tub. I borrowed it from her. I wasn't going to buy one. Although I know there's those really beautiful white ones that everybody has now that I just like.
What? A
Yeah.
beautiful white one?
Oh, I'll send it to you. You will want it. Yes.
You know I will,
It's
even though I have a
beautiful.
brand new tub that was never used.
That's
but
okay. You can just
I could
give
sell
it
it to
away.
somebody.
Yeah.
It's like literally no one ever blew it up. One other question I'm seeing here. Do you think Gilligan's Guide helped baby engage better at all?
So I never actually did officially Gilligan's Guide. So Gilligan's Guide, you only perform once you're in actual labor, not active necessarily. You could be in early labor, but you need to be in labor. And her whole thing is that she really wants people to be monitoring your provider to monitor the baby while you do it, because babies can get distressed in certain positions and things, and that's like a liability issue, mostly probably for her, and also just safety of her baby. Like Anne is really, really she pays attention to safety a lot.
Mhm.
And that's something that lacks in some of these other like maternal positioning things. So I never did it officially. The sideline release is part of it. So I did like a little bit of that, but no, I mean, I don't know. Sunny was in a weird position the whole time, I think. Then she kind of was in she just was never clearly like, oh, she's here. She's like this. Like she just moved a lot. She was constantly always moving around. And so again, I have no idea.
Yeah.
The theme to this birth is I don't know. And I usually like to know everything, and I don't know.
I love it. Well, that's great. Oh, this is amazing. Okay, I think there's so many, unless you see something else. I see a lot of questions that were answered or they're
pain
postpartum.
management. Yeah, no, this is like pain management. Like, okay, breath, like we kind of talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Vitamin K. No, I think the vitamin K personally is like a as needed basis. So if there was something like, a shoulder dystocia where there could have been bruising in the baby or like a broken collarbone or something like that, I would totally consider it, or the oral drops or whatever. But I'm kind of, again, I look at the numbers and I lean into my intuition. If I feel like it feels like something that's worrying me, then I would consider it, or I would do the drops or something. But I also think that there's got to be a reason that newborns are born the way that they are. And with, a lower vitamin K, maybe it's for stem cell migration, maybe it's something else. I don't know. But I watch for the symptoms, of course. And that's that's not medical advice. It's just like, that's the way that we do things, I guess. And then, yeah, somebody said, how long was it from start to finish? Yeah, I mean, I'm going to count it like it was a 32-hour. That was like early and active labor, probably active about like 9 hours. Did I feel pain? If not, what do I feel? No, I definitely feel pain, but I also feel just it's intensity, it's pressure, it's intensity. It's like your body is shaking, like your whole, like in those last couple contractions that are not pushing, that are just like really intense type, transition type active labor contractions. You're like, the amount of power that's going through your body is, you have to like do something to meet it. That's why I think like oming and moaning and really getting control of your breath is so helpful, because it's like it almost feels like there's just a big open tube from the top of your head all the way down through your vagina, and like literally the baby is coming in from the cosmos and is like coming in through you, so that, and your uterus is just like everything's shaking. It's like an earthquake. It's like it's like just so much power. And so a lot of people don't perceive it as pain. They just perceive it as like incredibly intense. And I can relate to that. I can see what you mean. But I'm like, yeah, I get, yeah, but it's like, it's just so, it's not the kind of pain like a broken bone pain. Like, I mean, I know we talk about this a lot, but it's really hard to explain. It's just the most intense thing that you'll ever feel. Like, you can't feel anything more intense than that, I don't think, in your body. So that's that. Okay, let me see. I think maybe I'm just seeing like some different ones that you're not. And did anyone? Oh no, some of these are.
A lot of them are postpartum, like baby questions, or I felt like you answered in your story.
No, yeah. I'm seeing that. Oh, did I have a? Yep. I got it. Okay, cool, great. Well, thank you guys for submitting the questions, because it's helpful to know, what do you guys wonder about? Oh yeah, and really quick, is the mucus secretion, the water breaking different? Yeah. So the mucus plug is in the cervix. The cervix is like the end of a balloon. It's like that little neck of the balloon, and the balloon being your uterus. And that whole length of tissue will fill in early pregnancy with a very thick mucus that prevents bacteria and anything from going up and potentially affecting or infecting the baby. So as you begin to start to efface and dilate in early labor, the mucus that was there is going to fall out. And so some women actually never notice it or see it, and that's completely normal as well. Some women see lots of it. This chick had so much. I guess it really is. I had so much because even when she was starting to crown, there was just tons of this like, so you'll see some photos like the bottom of the birth pool. It maybe looks like it's poop. It's not poop. It's like strings of mucus that were coming out. And then your water breaking is like the baby's in the water bag inside of your uterus. So yeah, two different things.
Amazing.
Okay. So anyways, this is a long one. Sorry, here we go. I know we're done.
No, it's okay. This is great. Thank you so much for sharing. This is amazing. And I'm so happy that baby Sunny's here and that you're doing good.
I'm so glad that you got to be there. That was the best.
Too. Oh, it was the best. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We will do a postpartum episode soon. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Healthy as a Mother podcast. In order for others to hear this information, please leave a review with Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and send to a friend who could benefit from this content. We're so excited to share more on becoming and being a mother next time.
And please remember that the ideas and views of this podcast are for informational purposes only and are not intended to serve as a substitute for medical care of any kind, including the diagnosis or treatment of any illness or disease. Consult with your provider before integrating this information into your own care plan. And remember, a healthier future starts now, and it starts with you.